And as soon as I start the car to go to back up, police car comes in behind me. A marked car comes behind me. 3, 4, 5. Another car comes up on my front lawn, backs me in. Unmarked prosecutor's office cars, plain clothes, uniformed local PD, guns drawn on me, felony stop in my own driveway in early afternoon.
You are now tuning in to the Relentless Project. Real people, real stories, real life.
I'm a guest in your house here.
Yeah, how do you like it?
It's nice.
Putting it together a little slowly, brick by brick, I like to say.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, man.
I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you for driving in.
Yeah, we had a bit of a drive. We hit the weather, we hit the traffic. We came into Pittsburgh. We were seeing Penn State Stadium still under construction, and
where'd you guys?
we came in 80.
Okay,
So 80 from the east, west.
I don't know why I thought you guys were like.
We're like
I
15.
thought you guys were like Midwest for some reason.
We're about 15 minutes as the crow flies to New York City. So if I'm a little closer to the city than he is, but yeah, right out like a suburb of New York City, really, Jersey.
Yeah. Jersey.
Yeah, I know. Wait, I don't know do I have a Jersey accent?
Nah, well, you got something.
Something's
you got
in
something.
there.
Dude, you're like the third or fourth Jersey Jersey guest in like the span of 2 months.
All roads lead back to Jersey, man.
So
Something.
I'm starting to find my way out over there in Jersey. I'll be there in a couple of weeks, actually.
Awesome.
Middletown.
Oh, I know Middletown. Yeah, that's a little south. That's probably 45 minutes south of where I am.
I don't know anything about Jersey other than they argue about north and south. Central ain't a thing, allegedly.
Taylor ham and pork roll.
What do you call it?
Well, I call it Taylor ham because I'm in North Jersey. And he swears, so I could settle it.
From the back, it's pork roll.
The dispute has been settled, right? So the meat is technically pork roll, but the most famous purveyor of it is Taylor Provisions, which is out of Trenton, New Jersey. So they call it Taylor ham. So both are kind of right.
Like a mixture.
But if you want to be a purist, it's pork roll, right? So like Philly stuff, Pennsylvania stuff, pork roll.
I'm not getting in the middle of that.
Are we doing scrapple, right?
Scrapple?
Scrapple's like a Pennsylvania thing, right?
I haven't heard that one. I know there's some like specific Pittsburgh terms that I'm not even from Pittsburgh. I've moved here like 5-6 years ago. What is it? Well, yins. I use yins. Yeah, yins is straightforward. But they have they call the shopping cart something specific that's escaping me. Anyway,
so when you have a long bread sandwich with deli meat on it,
sub.
Okay, we call it a sub. So like his part of South Jersey, hoagie, hoagie,
well,
like the soda pop thing.
So I call it soda because of Spanish.
Yeah,
soda.
Right.
But people here, I think, call it pop.
I'm in Maine. I'm in Maine.
Yeah.
I had a couple minutes before my meeting. They're like, "Hey, go down the street. They got great grinders." I'm like, "Oh, great. What the fuck is a grinder?"
Yeah, there's an app for that.
Yeah. So you get the hoagie sub grinder thing, man.
Well, for those of you who don't know, this is Tom Flynn, and we're here on the Relentless Project. Your story kind of is very interesting, and the premise of the Relentless Project is to kind of highlight people's stories, kind of see. Like, one thing I've always found myself is having good conversation with good people and then not being able to relay that conversation later. Be like, man, you should have, like, this dude's story, you should have heard it.
Yeah.
And, like, there was no way to really capture the essence of the conversation. And now we get to. So you have a very interesting story. You are a father, right, first?
For sure, father of 3 amazing daughters. I hate to ruin it. My daughters are the best. Everybody's a proud father, right?
No, and it's funny when you described yourself. That's the first thing. One of the first things you mentioned. So I always ask this question. Not sure if you've seen any episodes, but how would you describe yourself when someone is like, "Hey, this is Tom Flynn. He's blank. How would you describe yourself if someone's asking?
So you hit the nail on the head without me even going there. But I would say father is what describes me best, right? So we have our occupations, we have our vocations. There's some very close friends of mine, people that I admire, and they talk about things about identities. And I agree with that. Like, listen, I was a cop for over 23 and a half years, 28 if you count my non-active duty years. But, they say if you're not a cop anymore, you lose your identity. There's one thing, I went into the police academy, and I remember one of the instructors there going in, and he goes, your life is now forever changed. No matter what you do in life, if there's a newspaper article published about you, it'll never say Tom, the private investigator, which was something I did. It'll never say Tom, whatever other job you had. It'll say former or retired police officer does this. So yeah, like, yes, you don't really keep your entire identity when you lose that, but you're never really not a cop. Even if you're in the academy and you flunk out, former police recruit, that's what the headline will read. Now, don't make that your entire being, but it's a chapter. Doesn't have to be the whole book, but it's a chapter. Liken it to the Marine Corps, right? They never say you're a former Marine.
Oh, yeah, that's like faux pas.
Right.
Say that.
You are a Marine. You were a Marine, you were in the service, you're always a Marine. Now, I'm not claiming to be
ex-Marine.
Right. Like, I don't think they say that.
No, they
right?
don't. They
so, but I would say it's fatherhood is really the role that I embraced. And I don't think that ever goes away. If, God forbid, one time, I lose my children to death, unfortunately, or something like that, you're never not a father. That's one that I can wrap my head around that.
Yeah, and I speak to a lot of men and a lot of men who are fathers, and it's interesting how like some of them kind of not portray themselves, but describe themselves, right? Like, I can tell as soon as you father first, or when someone mentions that, I immediately know, like, or it's been my experience that the intentionality is there.
Yeah.
I had MMA fighter Bronco here, and the first thing he said was, I'm a father. Dude's an amazing MMA fighter. Does all kinds of things. First, he's I'm a father before anything. And I'm like, this is going to be a good conversation.
Well, listen, man, you're doing great things. And I've watched a ton of episodes. MMA fighters, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guys, boxers. Did I get the wrong address? Are you sure I'm supposed to be here, man?
And that's exactly the whole point, right? Like, when I first started, there was a lot of MMA fighters. Like, I don't want this to be an MMA podcast, but one thing I found was everyone's story is different.
Yeah.
Why they're doing it, why they keep doing it, what their goals are while doing it. Mm-hmm. And then through that, I met entrepreneurs, promoters, police officers, which is the reason I started my other podcast, No Cop Out, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's essentially the Relentless project for cops specifically, because no one wants to hear 93 episodes of just cops. I'm a cop, and I don't even want to hear that. But your story is very interesting because one thing you said, former police, it's always like, once you take the title of police officer, and this is something that people need to hear who are not cops, right? Like, because I have an audience who, like, the majority of my audience doesn't even do MMA or train Jiu Jitsu or anything like that, but they listen to their stories and they pull from it and they apply it to their lives. And I think your story specifically, adversity is high in what you went through and probably what you go through every day, because it's not something that just goes away. And I think it's something that would resonate with a lot of people who tune in with good intention, right? Because we were talking earlier with Kevin, right? There's the lawyers who just want to attack and listen to kind of respond rather than listen to kind of understand what's going on and take from it, right? That's one thing I like to do when I'm having these conversations. I'm selfish, right? I'm learning, I'm taking, and I'm applying, right? And hopefully I can push your story to the next person and help them, and that's what I do. I go from one story to another story, and it all piles on each other, and the community's built, and then you meet awesome people, and then you're doing awesome things, and then I get to sit across from you.
Listen, likewise, man. I get to sit across from you. I mean, the law enforcement thing, I think we're an at-risk population for similar situations that have happened to mine, right? Because you look at it, we're at higher risk for divorce. We're at higher risk for PTS. We're at higher risk for suicide, substance abuse. There's got to be a reason for it. But I don't really pigeonhole mine as being, hey, he's a cop and this happened to him. My story, I say, is as unique as it is universal, right? So there's a unique aspect to it, but you know what? This applies to fathers, and as we get into it, it'll be mothers too that go through similar things. But I had some special little sauce on mine. I ain't gonna lie, I think it's a little different, but it's as unique as it is universal, man.
And before we get there, let's get into let people know what made you want to be a cop. What was the thing that drew you to the industry? Everyone has a different reason for coming in. What's one thing that brought you to it and then kept you in there for decades? Not to date you. But.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Listen, I gotta stay in shape like you are, man. I gotta get on the program. So I got a good partner travel with me, and he's keeping my eye on the ball.
Yeah, I see.
But people, people might know the show Blue Bloods. So you have the Regans, the NYPD, and there's this long lineage of cops and everything, and the whole family is involved. Well, I had absolutely none of that. So my father was a research and development chemist for a pharmaceutical company called Hoffman LaRoche. As a side little name dropping thing for that, he was involved in benzodiazepines, so benzos, as people know. So he actually, with a team of his, invented a compound called Valium.
I've heard of that.
So Valium was a pretty prolific drug in the 70s and things like that. So no law enforcement experience there. When I was growing up, I grew up in northern New Jersey, Essex County. It's about 15 minutes outside of New York City. And I guess people, if they're Sopranos fans, all the filming locations, wherever they were, man, like even when I was on the job, I worked a bunch of film shoots there, and that's just kind of where I live. Listen, I'm not in the life, not with anybody, but we know who the people are. Those people that were in that life, they just live in that area. So we knew that, but that's just sort of my neighborhood. Grew up, went to a Catholic grammar school, played some sports, some things like that. I hit the age of 5 when I was younger, and I'm an only child, and I'm a child of divorce. So my parents split. I didn't really realize it at the time, but I'd come to find out later in adulthood what the actual happenings were of the divorce. But I was raised by my father in my father's mother's home, so my paternal grandmother, and went through school and things like that, trying to find some direction, getting in kid trouble, right? Getting in mischief. I've been in the back of a police car before I was a police officer.
Hey, those make the best police officers, I hear.
Nothing serious. Juvenile stuff, run around, getting in mischief, things like that, but nothing too crazy. But I remember when I hit high school, there was our high school quarterback came back for career day. And this is what planted the seed. He, obviously he's a football star, so everybody loved him. His name was up there, all the records are up there. And he happened to be a New Jersey State Trooper. And he came back, and it was just something that hit me, and we know this in the game, command presence. The guy's uniform was squared away. He was fit. He spoke with authority. When the man spoke, it was his aura. People just listened. And I was sort of captivated by it, and I didn't really, just ignited a spark. I didn't really say, I'm definitely going to be a cop from this day forward, but it planted a seed. And that's what started it. So I went through life. I was really, I flunked out of college. I basically, went into college after high school, didn't show up for classes after a while, had good grades, excellent grades, but I just dropped off. And I said, man, I gotta get some focus here because I got to do something. I'm not going to be a laborer all my life. And I started doing private investigations, surveillance, some undercover work in retail environments and things like that.
Not policing yet.
Not policing yet.
Oh,
so
okay.
It was private investigations, store detective, loss prevention, chasing shoplifters, working at It's Giant Stadium, but I'm a Jet fan, so I like to call it Jet Stadium. So, for anybody listening, they all play in New Jersey. So I'm sorry, my New York fans. All the New York teams play in New Jersey. The stadium's in New Jersey.
Is that right? I didn't even know that.
It's MetLife Stadium.
I've driven past that a couple of times.
So MetLife is in New Jersey.
And that's the Giants
and the Jets.
And the Jets.
And the Jets both play at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. So I hate to break any hearts out there about the New York fans. Training camp for the Jets is in Florham Park, New Jersey. Their stadium's in New Jersey. Listen,
so everything does come back to New Jersey.
Okay, we were saying. But there, you're chasing, T-shirt vendors, the knockoff T-shirts and stuff like that. And this one job came across my radar, and I said, listen, I'm gonna start doing, I think, the police thing. I got to find a way towards that. And a job came up, and it said community service officer, and it was in a local PD around my area. I was taking police tests all other places. And I said, community service, maybe that's probation or something. Well, it turns out that the position was a civilian dispatcher, but it was like a hybridized version. So they would use civilian dispatchers for like taking walk-in reports, domestic violence reports, sort of like non-complicated investigative reports for theft, loss, things like that. You do some parking enforcement.
So kind of like the stuff that patrol cops don't want to do.
Really hate, right? So you listen, they're trying to hire civilians, save on some dollars, some ducats, as we say.
Some what?
Some ducats, some shavels, some shekels, or what have you. So it was a cheap, maybe like a class 1, class 2 special like we have in New Jersey. So I started to like it, and I developed a good rapport with the supervisors there and whatnot. 6 months after being a civilian, test came up, took the test. I was the number 1 non-resident. Went into the police academy, and from there was off to the races.
So you started in that civilian position and then rose up.
And working the desk, let me tell you, these dispatchers, they're unsung heroes. And I'm not saying that just because I did it. Like there are guys who are good street cops that cannot work the desk. They will be in the best firefight, the best physical altercation. You put them on a 911 call.
I believe it.
And they crumple. And vice versa. There's people that work the desk and they'll never make it in the field. They'll never have a physical use of force. They can't tell somebody what to do. They don't know how to talk to them, but they can work that desk and they talk to somebody on the 911 call.
It takes a special level of like concentration, patience, right? Because like a good dispatcher is something we overlook.
Yeah.
Right? Because when there's a good dispatcher, you don't think about it because you don't have to. You're dispatched to the calls. They have all the information you need there before you get there. They have the contact part, like everything's there for you. So you don't really think about, oh, this is a great dispatcher because they're doing their job, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But when you put a bad dispatcher in there,
you sure know
you
it.
start to realize, like, hold on, they're like
officer safety issues, weapons present, get the apartment number, where are you? Like it's goofy stuff.
Yeah,
but
hey, where's the complainant? Not sure. What?
Awesome.
You're not sure?
Yeah.
Like, and it's something that's overlooked. So it's I would agree. Like dispatchers are unsung heroes for sure.
So they call us first responders, right? Who's the first responder? The person who's at call intake.
The call taker.
They're really the first responder. So.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, man, just like, especially when we get storm mode, we get like this rain that just happened.
Yeah.
Our dispatch goes. We have over hundreds of calls just pending.
Yeah.
You know, and there's you have that smooth voice of the dispatcher. This person to this call, this person to this call. Hey, this is a repeat to this one. This might be like they're filtering all that for you.
Yeah.
You know, when that dispatcher's not there, we know because we're like, hey, can you dispatch me to this call? It's pending.
Yep.
No response. And they're just like overwhelmed. And then you get overwhelmed. And it's just now you two are arguing on the radio and the entire county hears you because it's just mess.
You listen, self-controls too at that point, right? What's the worst guy in the field? Like if you have a call and they scream into the mic, right? They're screaming bloody blue murder and you find out like what's going on. Oh, it's just a disturbance.
Yeah, or the car just didn't stop in time. He's taking off.
Exactly. Like
pulled into the next lot.
No better way to get broken off from a pursuit than screaming in the radio, man. Like, keep the chaos internal.
Yeah, we can't do that here in this area.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
We can only follow.
Very restrictive.
So you found yourself in law enforcement, and you kind of rose through the ranks while you were there.
Yeah.
kind of dabbled in a few things in law enforcement.
I had a pretty diverse career. So I hit the books. I was a big search and seizure guy, constitutional law, search and seizure. Like I really liked that aspect. I really liked the training aspect. Started with training dispatchers, running a 911 center. I was in our FTO program. Then I became an FTO, field training officer, for people that don't know what it is. We ran the San Jose model. And then I was eventually promoted to sergeant in 2005. And then I took over the FTO program. I started to get additional responsibilities in training, law enforcement accreditation. And then I was...
that might jarred some folks.
Oh, man, that's one that gets you. You get the eye roll, right? Whether it's CALEA or a state chief's accreditation. So the Commission on Law Enforcement Accreditation, which is CALEA stands for, CALEA. But very complex. It examines all the operations of a police department from top to bottom, from employee selection all the way to promotion, internal affairs, pursuits, every policy and procedure. And I was tasked with that. And I was a one-man show.
I would say that's a lot. It's a lot to do.
It was a learning experience, man. Like when I talk about the law and things like that, I consider myself a student of the law. And I became a student of both the law and the law enforcement function. And when you say just being a cop and then saying the words the law enforcement function, it sounds like just word salad, right? But it really does. I mean, that's everything. Budgeting, fleet management, 911. I mean, you talk about it, man. And I was fortunate to really be selected to do that. I can't say that I was always in the good graces of the higher-ups. As a good boss, I feel as a good boss, you always gripe upward. You never gripe downward to the men and women. That's what's being a good supervisor and leader in my eyes. I'm not saying I did it perfect, but I always felt you kind of gripe upward. And when you do that, you're going to ruffle some administrators' feathers.
No, I feel you on that. Yeah, some would say I'm probably in that same boat.
Yeah.
But it's all for the better, right? Like I don't know it. I don't know it all, right? I don't know the law enforcement function of everything.
I don't mean to be pretentious when I say that.
No, that's so true, because as like a steward of my department,
yeah,
I'm learning a lot about grievances and arbitration and time windows, and I'm like, normally if I got a problem with someone, I just approach you and talk about it. Well, no. Now we have this time span to do this, and we have to have it written, and it has to be written in this way, and there's so much. So it's like there's a lot of things that go into what makes a department function that us on patrol may overlook sometimes, right? We go, we get our car ready, we answer calls, and we come back.
Yeah.
But it's essentially an organization that's being run. You know, the chiefs are the CEOs, the lieutenants and admins are the other officers of that organization. And then there's a lot of roles, right? The fleets, one of our lieutenants deals with our fleets and our technology. So that's our body cams, our computers, our laptops, how our cars are wired.
Yeah.
I don't got to think about none of that.
So at the sort of the tail end of my career, I was, I hate using these words, but it's law enforcement lingo, right? So I was the commander of our support service bureau. So that was building management, our holding cell facility, our 911 center, and all the infrastructure that goes into policing. Like you said, MVRs, body cams, MDTs, the mobile data terminals. All of that stuff, the phone system, the recordings, the phones in the cell block.
And you're a cop, right?
Yeah.
And you're a cop.
And I would get called back for extra duty stuff. Like, listen, if there was a mass demonstration or some type of thing or a natural disaster, well, then I'm in the field. But I'm also doing the other things too. And listen, I'm not complaining. It was a blessing to be charged with that responsibility. That's what I wanted. I thrived on that responsibility. And listen, I'm not just an admin guy either. So I had street experience too. So I was in patrol. I liked doing, I was very proactive in traffic enforcement, traffic interdiction, arrested a lot of people. I was actually on a SWAT team I don't look it now, man, but
Oh,
you know.
stop! You gotta stop
So-
self-deprecating.
But that was actually one of the assignments that I really loved. The training for we called it a CERT team. So
That's what we call it here.
Yeah, critical.
I actually just got on our CERT team.
Critical. Congrats, man.
Thank you. And
So,
we just did our first like team training.
it's awesome, isn't it? It's fun.
It was like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm like dying. And it was right before I go to LA.
Yeah.
So I let the commander know. He's like, "Oh, just cut out early. Like, we understand." Well, something happened where he's like, they just start yelling, "Prep for gas." I'm like, dude, I gotta go like 20 minutes, and we're gonna do this full scale seizure of a building with
Yeah.
gas and everything. So I'm like putting my gas mask on. I'm like, oh, dude, and I'm like exhausted. We've been running stairs and ladders
Yeah.
all day.
Ballistic
Commander
shield
yeah,
training.
we didn't have shields on this training. We were just doing like kind of clearing stairwells, clearing room entries, climbing ladders, making entry second floor divisions and all that.
Getting the stack, man.
Dude, yeah, stack. So I put my gas mask on and I'm like starting to breathe and they're checking and I'm like, "Yo, this is going to be rough. This is going to be rough." And I got to leave in 20 minutes. Luckily, the commander comes up to me and he's like, "Don't you got to get going?" Like, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Go, get out of here." I'm like,
Yeah, there you go.
"You sure?" He's like, Go. You got a flight to catch." I'm like, "Okay." Boom. Dude. As I'm walking out, you just hear bang, bang, bang. I'm like, "Oh, there."
Oh, yeah, you're missing all the fun stuff.
All the fun. But I was like, you know what? I wouldn't have made my flight. That's my excuse.
They used to, we used to get like, listen, they bust your chops a little, right? Like, so anybody that's on a special weapons and tactics team, in our place, they used to say, "Oh, you're going out to play with your guns in your pajamas," right? Because what we wore was the Nomex flight suit, so it was green. So
We have Ranger Green, yeah.
So ours was, it was we used to call it a pickle suit. So it's all green.
I haven't heard that one. I'll
So,
use that one.
Yeah, so you're going out to play in your pajamas and go shoot at stuff and do, Yahoo rah-rah stuff. But it's fun, man.
I love training. I love learning. And most important, I love being surrounded by people who think like me, right? Like,
For sure.
on patrol, I'm the guy. Like when I was on midnights, I'd be like, "Hey, like let's go to school. Let's clear the school. Let's run reps on clearing the school.
Yeah.
Let's do this." I'm big in defensive tactics, right? So I'm like, "Yeah, let's go roll downstairs." I'm always that guy, and I get it. Not everyone works that same way, so I kind of catch flack for that sometimes.
Yeah.
But now I'm a part of a team where everyone thinks like that.
Yep.
Everyone's like, "Hey, I'm running this. Like, this is why I'm running this. Why are you?" And we're bouncing off each other for a good reason, right? We're trying to better ourselves and better each other. So now you're a part of this community, this team that thinks like that. So now I'm like I'm like the dumbest dude in the room, and I love that because now I have so much to learn and so much to gain from people.
The thing that I loved about the team too was the team dynamic. And after we do a training and do an after action, so anytime we were executing a warrant or if we had a call out for a barricaded suspect or something like that, the thing that I loved is no matter from the top of the team leader, all the way down to maybe the junior guy, when we did our after action, you were compelled to bring out your weakness before anybody else did. And I thought that was character building. Because listen, man, you don't want to just stay silent when you know, like, oh man, like I didn't cut the corner, I didn't clear my corner during that thing. There's something I could have done better. It expands the technology too. It's a acronym called CICD. So CICD is the constant improvement, constant development pipeline. So it's a loop. So you go constant improvement, constant development, and it just goes in a big circle. And you're always improving, always developing. I like that concept.
Yeah,
man. You're embodying it when you're doing stuff, like you got a building and you say, "Hey, let's do some drills. Improve."
Develop. Midnight can be slow. So it's
Yeah.
like, we got blue guns. Let's go run a rep, run 2 reps or something. And
Hell yeah, man.
you get some guys who are just like, "Nah, I'm just gonna go high." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever, I get it."
Yeah.
But you mentioned something earlier about people calling out their weaknesses or I forgot how you worded it, but there was a moment in there where we're clearing a room and he goes in and guy takes a shot. Tango down. Well, the shot was like on dude's cheek. We're continuing, and then our squad leader comes in. He's like, "Who took this shot?" Within a second, the guy stepped forward. "Hey, that was me.
Yeah.
Is this a good shot?" "No." He goes, well, you got them, but no, we this is where we want to be.
Yeah.
We're in training. Let's aim for perfection here.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, okay, boom, and that was it.
You know how easy it is? Like you can expand that to life, right? You do something wrong, own it, admit it, and then move on.
And then move on.
Like trying to navigate around it or explain it or hide it or something like that.
I
man.
came in and I bumped into this, and I was like, yeah, there's 1,000 excuses, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this wasn't the objective.
Yep. Absolutely.
Cool.
I just love that whole dynamic on the SWAT team, and I think most of your better time. We were a part-time team, so you have towns that have.
We were saying we're a regional team, so a lot of departments get their guys and comprise. Like you try out, each department gets a certain allotment of people based on size, and every other Friday you guys train, and it's cool because now you're working with neighboring agencies, but you're one team.
Yeah.
And then when you're back on patrol, you run into them like, oh, you're part of the team. Hey, what's up? So like you kind of bring all the departments together.
Yeah, and you bring something back. Anytime you do a training, you bring something back either to your peers, your colleagues, your superiors, your subordinates. The whole thing, man.
So obviously there was something you were very passionate about.
Oh yeah, I was like what they call big on the badge. I mean, like I dove in, like I do a lot of things, man. I just don't. I go full ass. I'm not a half-ass anything, man. I'm just a full ass.
You never go half-ass.
That's right.
You never go half-ass.
So yeah, it was big on the badge.
So when did you leave the job, leave the industry?
So I would say technically right now I'm negotiating a separation agreement with my employer.
Well, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that.
No, it's all good. Listen, that the time for hiding it, the time to own it, and to move on. I'm at that point. So I'd be a hypocrite if I said something and I didn't follow it. But I was married once before I was a cop, and you can see where this is going. And when I transitioned into law enforcement, there's a joke that my marriage lasted slightly longer than the cocktail hour.
I cannot joke about that because I'm all too familiar.
And it was just, wasn't anything in the marriage, so to speak, but being pre-cop and then post-cop, there were certain parts of that life that I just could not intersect with.
Yeah,
and part of it was
mash.
Right. And scheduling, things like that. So the first divorce was pretty much a handshake, a hug. I did everything pro se for a couple of $100. We hugged and walked away. So that was about as clean as you can get.
Yeah, you can't complain about that.
So, talk about being smart looking in books. I was stupid enough to get married again. But the second wife I met was actually in EMS. So I felt like
that's where you went wrong.
I thought I might have been doing something good, and because she understood the job, and kind of was aware of the rigors of law enforcement, things that happened. We'd been on calls together. We knew the same people. She knew the administration, and like a romance blossomed. Right? here's everything's wonderful. Right?
This is why people make jokes about us. This is why.
Right. I'm literally the embodiment of a joke. And but what? Listen, it started out as a dating relationship, blossomed into engagement, marriage, and then had 3 wonderful daughters that came out of that marriage. And 2009, 2011, 2014, my daughters respectively, and they, like I said, they're the best girls on this God's green earth. And as went forward, her father came down with a tragic liver illness. And at one point, I actually was willing to donate a portion of my liver. Now, my last name is Flynn. I'm an Irishman, and an Irishman giving his liver away is like selling a lemon, right, man? I would imbibe every once in a while, but it wasn't anything bad. But I get that.
It's preconditioned. It's
listen,
good to
man,
go.
this thing can withstand anything, man. This thing's got armor on it. But as time grew on, there was definitely a strain on the marriage, and for what ownership I got to take, and like I said, to own what I had, there were stressors and things that were going on with my promotion, the things that all the cops out there in the traumatic incidents that we're exposed to, and I've had a bunch of critical ones. I don't go into war stories, but a couple of them do stick out. I had a guy that set himself on fire in front of me, and, you know, burned alive in front of me, children that were drowned by their father, one at a time. And he ultimately hung himself, and then he had to give the notification to the surviving mother.
Yeah, it's rough.
So, listen, you know, again, we're not putting these things out there, but I had a couple. They're real. There's about 100 other ones and whatnot, but the marriage started to get into some trouble, and one fateful night there was a verbal argument between me and my spouse, and nothing physical, nothing like that, and she picked up the phone, dialed 911, and said, "My husband's a cop, he's a lieutenant, he's out of control, get somebody here." Now, we talk about the dispatcher at a call intake. If I was a dispatcher and I heard that, we know what we're sending. We're sending the cavalry. If there really is like a member of service, MOS, you know, an officer, off duty or not, there's at least probably one firearm involved in that, is duty weapon, if not a backup, personal weapons. And we've seen law enforcement sort of relationships that can escalate, and they can be deadly, and they're dangerous for everybody. A DV, domestic violence incident, even though there was no violence.
Well, that's I need to premise that.
Yeah.
They're called domestic violence, but
It's a disturbance,
it's a
really.
disturbance is what essentially
Yeah.
a lot of departments are now labeling them.
Yeah. So there was response. There was some communication between my spouse. Listen, you know, I don't know what happened here, but I have to go wait outside because I was a boss at the time. I'm a lieutenant, and in a neighboring municipality. So I might know some of the guys, but I might not. But I got to go out there, and they have to see I'm either unarmed, there's no disturbance inside the house. And, you know, I don't know in your experience, if you get involved with guys that are off duty that are heated, I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do. I'm going to do what I would expect a civilian to do if I got there.
Yeah,
I'm going to be
absolutely.
cordial, cooperative, whatever I can do. And that's exactly what I did do. And I'm not going to criticize my brethren in blue, but the way the call was approached, they didn't know what to do. I think they had a prior law enforcement involved disturbance that maybe they did something with, and then it came back on them, because I later found out that they were discussing that through body cam MVR footage. And the one statement that was made says, well, you know, said it's a verbal, there's nothing here, you know, what do you want us to do? So they had a sergeant, then the sergeant called the lieutenant. Lieutenant wasn't sure what to do. He gets on the phone, calling the prosecutor's office, and they said, well,
Better safe than sorry, right?
yeah, but like, you know, if you don't have the predicate acts for a domestic violence incident, you don't have the acts. It's just a disturbance, you know, that just handle it like any other call. You know, yes, there's special circumstances because it involves an active law enforcement officer. I get that. But the offer was made, well, ask the other party if they want a restraining order, and if they say yes, then we'll make it a domestic. That's not how that works in any jurisdiction that I'm aware of, in New Jersey or out of New Jersey that I'm aware of. But that's what happened, and much to my shock, my spouse at the time said yes. So restraining order is issued, and part and parcel with the restraining order at the time in New Jersey, it serves as a de facto search warrant and seizure for any personally owned or duty weapons. So the home that I was living in,
I see where that's like a snowball effect.
Yeah, so the home that I was in, I had inherited it 2 years prior to me being married, and it was inherited from my father. It's a family generational home, 4 generations. And with that, my father, the chemist that I told you, was actually an outdoorsman and an avid marksman. So he had a pretty large firearm collection, both handguns, long guns, all purchased legally, all receipts, every strip of documentation there. He's a law-abiding citizen. But with that home, I inherited those firearms. I remember going to do a voluntary register with the local PD just to see, like, hey, do you want these? And they handed me this very small piece of paper. Now, stringent as the firearm laws are in New Jersey, when you inherit firearms, any register of those is voluntary. You don't have to, but you can if you want to, but the purpose is really minimal. It's one of those times where there's sort of no federal firearms licensee needs to be involved. You inherited them through death, through probate. Which is what happened. And when I went to the PD, they hand me a little 2 piece of paper. And I remember the detective who was down there. He's like, you can do it, but it really doesn't mean anything. I'm like, all right, cool. I was like, I got all the receipts. Like,
Yeah,
why am I
what's
going
your
to do extra paperwork? Like cops, we don't like to do with the necessary paperwork, never mind extra. So those firearms were seized by virtue of the restraining order. And I remember at the scene, really the toughest part was when the restraining order was served to me, and my 3 daughters were in the home at the time of this incident. And at the time, they were 9, 7, and 4 years old. So you have 3 of my girls, like, not knowing what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And
It's
me
a scary
being,
thing. It's a scary thing when, I understand this. Like when we're involved in something,
yeah,
like tensions are heightened. It's scary, right? Kids see us in their home.
yeah,
It's never, oh, hey, hi. It's always like, what's going on, right? You see it in the kids' eyes. So I can only imagine, especially with that young.
my daddy's a policeman. Why are all the policemen around my daddy?
Yeah.
You know, I'm using old school thing, policeman, right? Like,
Well, no, but that's how kids see it. You know,
Yeah.
like what do parents tell their kids? If you're bad, the police are gonna. So the police are always taking bad guys,
Yeah.
right? So like now when we're dealing with a domestic disturbance, where you know our role in this is just, hey, let's separate you two. Nothing happened. Maybe you just let cooler heads prevail.
yeah,
Well, we're talking to one of you at a time. One of you are bad in the eyes of the kids, right? Because
of course.
we've always put it in the kids' minds. The police deal with bad guys.
Yeah,
You know, and that's something I always try to break. I'm like, oh, he's going to arrest you if you're bad. No, I'm not. No, I'm
Right.
not. Don't put that in your kid's mind.
no,
Like that's your parents' job to deal with. If you ever need help, you find us.
yeah.
Like it sounds corny, it sounds stupid, but I always check that.
One of my things that I say, like, you know, what does it mean to be a cop? And everybody said, you know, protect and serve and help people. I feel that is part of it, but I'd call bullshit on that. One of the main things I saw about law enforcement was to protect those that cannot protect themselves and be ruthless against the bully. Now, being ruthless against the bully can be someone who's violative of the law, right? So if you have somebody that's assaulting somebody else, in order for it to qualify for an assault, there has to be an actor and a victim. That's when I say you be ruthless against the bully. And that doesn't mean using excessive force. That means clear, decisive action to protect those that need protecting. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Listen, it's oversimplifying the job for sure in 2 sentences, but that was sort of my mantra for me. But so this restraining order is issued, and the children, you know, I will hand it to the responding guys on scene, including the bosses. I said, listen, man, you know, can I just go say goodbye to my kids? Because I had to leave the premises. My family
Eviction
generational
notice,
home.
yeah, usually
it's a
it's-
restraining order. Like, I got no choice, and I'm going to follow. I'm not going to give them a hard time. Like, this is happening. This is happening, so I'm just going to adapt and overcome. And I remember, man, my 3 daughters clinging to me like any worst movie you had ever seen. When children and parents are torn away, they were screaming at the top of their lungs, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, please, please don't go. Please don't leave us." And that is a sound that it was captured on the recordings that night that I reviewed later, and it just echoes in my mind to this day. Talk about all that other stuff with the traumatic incidents.
How many times have you listened to these recordings?
Dozens upon dozens, and
I can tell.
and there's a point when I got to it, you know, sort of after this situation had passed, that I just can't, because I know it's not healthy at this point to really go back there. So that night of the incident, I'm removed from the household, and I went down to the PD to go fill out everything. They wanted to do a consent to search my car, see if there's any weapons. I said, "You got it, man. No problem." Gave the consent to search, cooperated the whole way. No other weapons found or seized. But now I am removed from the family. I'm immediately suspended with pay from the job because of the domestic incident. And I'm now living in a pretty shabby hotel for a while. I can't work any extra duty jobs, but I'm getting paid. But I'm like, I got to put this thing back together, because if this temporary restraining order turns into a final, that could be a third rail for my employment. My career could be over, right? Because if I get a final restraining order, it could prohibit me from possessing a firearm.
Yeah.
Potentially. You know, you can do the sign in, out thing.
Yeah, but
and
then at that point, departments
cut you.
and and that's another thing, right? Like Now you become a stain in your department for something.
Yeah.
Because it's just liability.
Right.
Well, if you look into the situation, you would know it's not a liability.
Right.
But because there's a piece of paper, no one's going to look in any further than that piece of paper.
Uh-huh.
You know, and we see that all the time. Former police officer, right? I'm sure even someone listening to this is like, oh, cop with a PFA, or we call them PFAs.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, yeah, but you know how many people with PFAs that I've dealt with that in my mind, which I don't get to treat this any differently, but in my mind, I'm like, why is this a PFA?
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, why did the court grant this? I was here for the initial call.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. I don't live in the home with these people, but I get there, and they even show me video. I'm thinking of a specific incident.
Sure.
She's like, I got video of this. She shows me a video, and it's the guy. He's obviously upset, but he's walking away, and she's following him with a camera. He's like, just leave me alone. Please, just leave me alone. And he's walking away.
Yeah.
She calls. He's outside. Video ends. We get there. He's outside. I'm like, okay, like nothing physical happened. Nope, nothing physical. Okay. Would you feel comfortable if he just leaves for the night? Yeah, I want him gone. He's like, okay. We don't hear from them. The next day, a PFA comes in. I'm like, did something happen?
Yeah.
And I'm reading the PFA, and I'm like, no, nothing extra happened.
There's been a pendulum swing that the protective measure that was intended as a shield is now being turned into a spear.
And then you get the dueling PFAs. You ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
One gets one on the other, so the other one's like, oh, I'm going to get one on you.
Yeah. One counts.
Yeah, one counts. Just don't talk to them.
Yeah.
The whole thing is do not have contact with them.
Yeah.
Just don't talk to each other.
And which I did not do, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
So after in my particular incident, I'm waiting for the hearing on the temporary, and it was a pretty harrowing time. So I'm thinking that this is actually critical to my career, and I'm thinking, like, what do I got to do to get my family back, first of all? But first things first, let's take care of this restraining order. And we have a hearing, and you probably know from experience, when you have couples or relationships that get these restraining orders, normally they're filed on a Friday. By the following Tuesday, they're dismissed.
Yeah.
Because they think better of it. They heat a moment. I want a restraining order. I want him out. I want her out. I want this out. And then
that's the whole
cooler heads
premise of the
prevail.
Emergency PFA. 24 hours, don't talk to each other.
Gotcha.
And usually we don't see anything after that.
Yeah. But a lot of them, and we get, listen, we go to frequent flyers too, right? So you get the this is the 8th one. It's like, oh, we copy and paste. We know this one. We got the last one. Everything's pretty much the same. So you see these people that are sort of cyclical going through the system. Not my case, but just to show that every protective order doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing happened. There might be dysfunction in the relationship or what have you, but when it lands into the court's eyes, it gets messy. So I get to my hearing, and my spouse had no intention of dismissing it, which gave me kind of a prelude into what's to come, right? So I feel like this is now maybe some sort of tool to leverage something, maybe in family court or custody or something. I really didn't know. I wasn't intended divorce at that time. Probably another thing where I'm not so smart, right? Goes through a full hearing, goes through a judge. The restraining order is dismissed. The judge found no grounds for a restraining order even to be issued. So dismissed after a full hearing. I have a sigh of relief. I can get back to work, can work on the marriage. I can go back. I'm trying to work out to see my children now, get back into my generational home. I give some cooling off period, get ready to go back to the home. I get back to the home. She's gone. Kids are gone. Most of the belongings out of the house are gone. House is virtually empty. Couple tumbleweeds going across the floor, and now the family court issue is afoot. So now I have to go to the family court to get an order for the children to be returned to me to be seen, which was my main objective. We finally get there because she's not willing to do it initially. Get an order. This is probably, I don't know, seven or so days after the restraining order is dismissed. The children are going to come back to the home. They're going to be dropped off to me for a while. So I figure, hey, man, I got to go back into daddy mode. So I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to go to Costco. I'm going to go to the supermarket. We're going to have a banquet, welcome the girls back, try and patch things up. And I get in my car, which is in suburban New Jersey, kind of a suburban area right across the street from my children's grammar school. And as soon as I start the car to go to back up, police car comes in behind me. A marked car comes behind me. 3, 4, 5. Another car comes up on my front lawn, backs me in. Unmarked prosecutor's office cars, plainclothes, uniformed local PD, guns drawn on me, felony stop in my own driveway in early afternoon. And
The fuck?
thank you. That's what I said. And
I'm just like, I know what calls we've been on. We don't even roll like that.
they rolled in heavy and deep. So
I just want to take a second to shout out a few companies who've believed in me. These were one of our first official sponsors, so huge shout out. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Carbo Jewelers, established in 1997 on the values of honesty and integrity. Whether you're searching for the perfect piece, need expert repair services, visit Carbo Jewelers in Newark's Ironbound District, where your jewelry is always in safe hands. This episode is also brought to you by Continental Jewelers, proudly serving Hudson County, New Jersey since 1964. Whether you're seeking a timeless piece or need expert repairs, they've got you covered. Visit Continental Jewelers, your trusted source for all things jewelry. You can find them on Instagram at Carbo Jewelers or online at carbojewelers.com. Lastly, big shout out to Carbo Trading. Besides coins, precious metals, and jewelry, if it could be traded and collected, he's probably got it. They can be found on Instagram at carbo.trading. You can find all of our sponsors out online on our sponsor page at therelentlessproject.com.
I could see intent in their eyes, and being a guy that's on the job for 20 plus years, I'm not making any mistakes here. Hands cleared, showed the whole thing, turned the car off, out of the door, brings me out, goes, you know why we're here? I said, I have no idea why you're here. He goes, it's about the guns. I said, you have all the guns. You have my duty weapon. You have all my personally owned firearms. He goes, it's about the guns. Cuffed me up, put me in the back of the marked unit, arrested, taken to the local PD. Still had no idea what the hell was going on. So
It's about the guns. That's now I see why people be like, tell me why I'm arrested. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, and I that's something I like to do, but like,
Yeah.
it makes sense. You just roll up on someone's house, at least tell them why you're at their house.
yeah, and listen, man, at that point I could tell they were in serious. And I'm still respectful of the law enforcement process, like whatever it is, like we got to work this out, and now is not the time to debate it, which I would suggest to people who are detained as well. Comply and then question when appropriate. So I'm brought to the local PD, and I find out that of my inherited firearms from my dad, 2 of those firearms were purchased legally, but during the time of when I inherited them, at some mysterious time, they were covered under the New Jersey assault weapons ban. So they were 2.
We all love New Jersey.
Man, when I tell you, listen, you can go down the rabbit hole about, Second Amendment stuff and what qualifies as an assault weapon, but these particular firearms were under that assault weapons ban law. And there were magazines that my father had purchased legally at the time, but at the time of this arrest, they were deemed to be high-capacity magazines. So,
Which is what, 4 rounds in New Jersey?
well, you might think, right? So for us, it's anything in excess of 10. So there were 14 of those.
So any duty pistols, high capacity.
Well, the funny thing you say that, because when they modified that rule in New Jersey, they did not put a carve-out in for law enforcement officers. So for a short period of time, all New Jersey law enforcement officers were in violation of the high-capacity magazine law, because their duty weapons were either 13 and 1 for a Glock Model 23. So there's 13 in the mag, 1 in the chamber. And they had to really step quick, because you had guys that did not want to bring their duty weapon home because they thought they fell under the assault weapons ban. And the New Jersey State PBA had to address that with the Attorney General's office for them to actually fix the law.
And how does LEOSA play into all that? Where officers can carry.
Yeah, LEOSA. So you have LEOSA, and then there was the caveat, the follow up to LEOSA, which allows you to go from state to state now without being in violation of that law. So they did fix it at one point in time. Now, those were sort of not applicable to me because at that point in time, what I was charged with was just a part and parcel from that. Now, I did speak to somebody else, a firearms attorney, that told me based on your circumstance, being on the SWAT team, having qualified with those weapons, the Colt M4, the patrol rifle, the arrest should have never happened. But we're not at that point yet. I'm still at the local PD. I'm in lockup. I'm put in with local arrestees. I'm not segregated, but these are locals, whatever they're in for, I didn't really know. But I'm not segregated. I'm not put any other place. There's like a handful of other arrestees in there. And the sergeant who handled it at the time, he's like, I could say this because it's over. He goes, this is complete bullshit. He goes, what you're being charged is complete bullshit. I was like, listen, man, I'm not going to give you static, but you let me know. Like, I could have turned myself in if this was a charge. Like,
yeah, call me, I'll come right in.
Yeah, like I probably would have come represented. I could have taken the summons, and then we'll fight it out in court or whatever it is. And I said, well, I'll take the summons now, and I'll. He's like, no. Goes, there's no bail. Goes, I said, no bail? I said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm an active duty law enforcement officer. Like, there's no, I've never had I don't have any, I have strong roots to the community, no arrests. I'm not a flight risk. Like, I'm not a habitual offender. I'm not going to flee the country. Like, I don't get it. He goes, the prosecutor put no bail on it. I said, well, what happens? He goes, you're being committed to the Essex County Correctional Facility. So I'll give you an idea. The Essex County Correctional Facility in Newark, New Jersey, some of the worst offenders go there. And it's a jail, it's not a prison, but we do have people that are serving out prison sentences in the county jail because of housing. And that's the county on which I was most active. So the community that I worked in, people are assuredly in that jail that I have put there, or been instrumental in the arrest that put them there. So,
sounds like a good time.
It was, I on the whole, I could think of a lot better days than that one. And
so you were being made an example.
I was
without knowing the situation at hand. That's just.
I would agree. So I'm then transported to the county jail, which I have done countless times for other prisoners, being the driver. Now I'm a passenger in handcuffs. They had to clear out the booking facility in there for my own safety because they had the wherewithal to know the guys actually called ahead. It's like, we're bringing in a police lieutenant here who has to be committed, and he's facing felony charges, serious felony charges.
That's wild, bro.
So booked, fingerprinted, processed, strip searched, full strip search, not a body cavity search, but strip search, spread the cheeks, the whole thing, asking about your sexuality, tuberculosis test, under the skin, what's your sexual preference, what's this, what's that. And I had to do the perp walk in the orange suit, in the white sneakers, in the correctional facility, and I was put in general population after that. There was an inmate that was in my cell that had to be ejected out of that cell, and he was none too happy about it. And the cell doors didn't close right away.
You pissed somebody off.
I mean,
it's the accreditation thing.
Yeah. I think there's a policy that I might have written that said, hey, don't do this. And I got to tell you, when that cell door closed, man, that was one of the loudest sounds, one of the most remarkable sounds. Everything was going through my head, man. Like, I thought it was all over. And I didn't really know the severity of the charges at the time, but I'm in the Essex County Correctional Facility. I'm thinking there's got to be a next day. The one inmate comes back, and listen, man, they're hurling racial slurs at me walking in there, man. Like, I just don't look like a tough guy. You talk about race relations outside of correctional facilities. Race relations inside a correctional facility are 100-fold worse. You know, like, we can talk about rainbows and lollipops and everybody hugging and kumbaya and get along. It don't work that way in a correctional facility.
It's a whole different world in there. Yeah.
So I thought it was going to be a day. One day turned into 2, into 3, into 4. On the 4th or the 5th day, they transferred me out of county for my own protection. finally put me in ADSEG, which is administrative segregation. Out of county, when I did the transport, I was transported in a chain gang with the rest of all the other offenders and inmates, good, bad, the ugly, whatever you want to call it. And it wasn't until about 14 days going back and forth between the two county jails I was finally released and given my charges, which were 2 second-degree counts of felony possession of assault firearms and 14 fourth-degree charges of high-capacity magazines. Now, the firearms were mandatory 10-year consecutive prison sentences. No judicial discretion under
Firearms
something.
that you inherited.
Correct.
Not even that you went out and purchased.
Nope.
Legally, illegally.
Nope. So I was facing 10 years plus 10 years. So we're talking 20 years mandatory. And it's called the Graves Act in New Jersey. And it was something initiated by Frank Graves, who was a mayor of Paterson, New Jersey, to combat gun violence, if you will. And then the 14 fourth degree charges were probably another 10 years cumulatively. So I was looking at 30 years in prison as an active police lieutenant.
Like, even take away active police lieutenant, like
An innocent man.
Yeah, any civilian dealing with the same thing.
Could have happened to anybody.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I listen, like I do try, like, you're right for correcting me on that. So like I'm trying to, but someone who is employed as a police lieutenant is generally of good moral turpitude and moral character that, you know, they're generally,
keep the job.
you're
Yeah.
generally a rule follower at least, you know, or you don't screw up much. After that, I was placed on house arrest for approximately 5.5 months, where I couldn't leave the house. I had to report to pretrial services, which is effectively like probation. I had to report weekly in person. The pretrial officer that was there was a woman, wonderful. Being a cop, I showed up to my first report in a suit, and I looked at the rest of the room, and they were, listen, I'm going to tell you, I'm not slighting anybody. There were prostitutes, drug dealers, and gangbangers in there. Why? Because I'm a cop and I know what a prostitute, a drug dealer, and a gangbanger looks like in my own neighborhood and the city in which I work.
Well, you've dealt with. Yeah, that's what
So
I'm sure you've dealt with.
and I went there, and it was kind of now I can laugh about it, but she came in, and I think all the other people that were there to report thought I was a lawyer.
Who you representing? Myself.
Yeah. And she told me, she's like, "What are you doing?" And she kind of looked up and down. I said, "Well, you know, like I said, I'm a police lieutenant, and I'm here. I this is what I do." And she goes, "No. She goes, "Don't worry about that. You just come regular." And she looked at the charges and all the other things. And when I told you about the sergeant that was handling it, she goes, "This is bullshit." She goes, "I have real offenders that I could be spending my time with watching on house arrest. Why I have to watch you, I don't know."
That's the system.
So the court part of that, the criminal court, ensued. And during those proceedings, I prevailed on a motion to suppress that original evidence. Now, the burden for any search warrant is probable cause. The sort of rule that had happened in New Jersey was reasonable cause was the burden to get the restraining order, and then they just executed the search warrant on that. So it failed to meet the constitutional burden for probable cause for a search warrant, and that was part of the grounds under which that the firearms evidence.
You have beat because the initial complaint was thrown out.
Correct. So there's no grounds for the complaint, and there was no reasonable cause, and there certainly wasn't any probable cause to execute that search warrant. So I prevailed on that, and this went on for months. The original, before I prevailed, attorney called me, said, "You won." I fell into a heap in my own living room, crying, sobbing like a woman. The next thing I get a couple days later is that the prosecutor's office is appealing that decision. So I was right back into it. And as a deputy attorney general assigned to the case as well. They appealed it. It went to the appellate division. I prevailed. I cried in my living room again because it's like, okay, I beat it twice. They appealed it a third time to the New Jersey Supreme Court. So now I'm back in the game again, fighting this battle all over again. And I finally prevail, at the New Jersey Supreme Court win, all the charges are dismissed and they've been expunged. So anybody that hears this and hears about a police lieutenant that has a criminal record, it's expunged. So you're not allowed to tell anybody.
I don't know where that puts me, but this is a public.
Nah, of course. I'm just listen. I'm throwing some legalese at you.
No, so having gone through all that,
Yeah.
how aren't you? Actually, I guess I should ask: are you jaded? You know, because one thing that made me want to become a police officer was I really didn't like how things were. I saw good cops do it, and I saw bad cops do it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this is something I think I could be good at and something I want to be a part of, because I think the spirit of police officers,
It's a noble one.
it's a noble one, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the bad and the weird that sneak through. But I think the spirit of what it stands for to be a police officer
100%.
is that of a good one.
100%.
But having gone through this, being on the other side of that, very easy to go, you know what? Fuck this. Like, I spent my whole career not being this guy, and then I get approached this way.
I felt like my reward for dedication and professionalism was met with outright betrayal. And about being jaded, I'll answer it this way, and it's an indirect way to answer it, and I can understand if you could be pissed at me for answering it this way.
I don't get pissed. You see what I went through today? I don't get pissed.
Yeah. Some of the most dangerous adversaries that a law enforcement officer comes into contact in his entire career reside inside police headquarters.
I would agree with that.
So I would say to the chiefs, deputy chiefs, the brass, the supervisors, the people that are in administration, the good ones, the utmost of respect. And they're really integral to an officer's wellness, well-being, and overall success in what is a law enforcement profession. The ones that weaponize internal affairs, weaponize the criminal justice system for use like human resources, those people, I can't say the same thing about them. So I think I answered it indirectly, but you feel me where I'm coming from.
No, I do feel you, because I'm a huge critic of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right? Because, you hear this all the time. No one hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
For sure.
And I think a lot of the system, or what policing has become, has lost its spirit, right? Because when people look at laws and rules, right? Like, our goal is to what? Essentially keep the peace.
Yeah.
Whatever, let's dumb it down even more.
Yeah.
When someone calls us, someone's not at peace. And they've called upon us to bring some sort of solution to restore some sort of peace. It's never going to be the same, right? Especially when you get a tragic call, right? Like, let's get very extreme. Active shooter. You're not going to bring peace or restore peace, but you're going to bring some sort of relief to the situation,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's our goal if we're going to dumb it down. But it's become more of like you said, it's become like a game. Please don't kill me for saying that, but and my department, the area I work in, very good. And I'll use COVID as an example.
Sure.
When lockdowns occurred, orders went out, anyone out after this time, stop them, cite them. And our chief was one who was like, look, we get it. We understand, but we're not gonna harass people who are out and about. These are adults going to work or doing things.
Yeah.
Like, unless something facetious is occurring, like we're not getting involved in any of that.
Yeah.
And there goes the spirit of the law, right? Our job is to stop the spread, was the thing.
Yeah.
right?
At the time. Sure.
At the time, I'm going with what we were getting
At the time.
at the time.
For sure, man. I'm with you.
So, but then we saw all over the news, some cops going to people's houses because there were 3-4 cars parked in the driveway.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing here?
So I would say how that is executed, and I boil this down probably from the FTO program as well. What you're looking for in an ideal cop transcends all the way up to a police administrator, whoever the law enforcement executive is in there. And I say the perfect recipe is the perfect blends of hearts and smarts, right?
I'm
So
gonna have to use that.
hearts and smarts, right? So if you look at both of them on a graph, if you have a guy that's ultra feely, touchy, maybe he's brave as whatever, but he is as dumb as a bag of rocks, he's not going to use the hearts he has in the right way. If you have a guy that is super intelligent, super efficient, great marksman, knows every law, but he doesn't have an ounce of compassion or an ounce of when to use discretion when it's reasonable, that's not going to work either. So you're looking for the perfect intersection of hearts and smarts. And that's where you take the spirit, like you're saying, of the law and execute it in a way within those guide rails in which we're given. And I think that'll equate to success, right? Like just do it with hearts and smarts, man. And that's when we see the cops that we don't like, the ones that really sometimes get crucified for a mistake of the head versus a mistake of the heart, right? The mistakes of the head, those are the guys that don't get crucified. You don't criminally prosecute somebody for a mistake of the head. If it's a mistake of the heart and they know better, depending on the circumstances, maybe there's penalties involved.
That's a good way to, yeah, that's a good way to put that.
That's just my take on it, man.
It's
You
like
know?
when people say, if you can articulate why you did something,
Yeah,
you're not wrong.
right.
Maybe you did it, you went about it the wrong way,
Yeah.
but you're not wrong. But if you hit them with I don't know, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Well, even if you did the right thing, you're wrong because you don't even know why you did this thing.
Act within reasonable tolerances of error. And that's where I think policing right now, they've tightened those tolerances of error beyond human capability. And it's a human job. It's a human job that does not happen in a laboratory, doesn't happen in a courtroom, doesn't happen in a training environment. It happens in the real world. So those tolerances have to be a little bit more reasonable, in my opinion, for police and society to really exist as a whole.
Yeah, and reaching that, I don't know what you've been through in your life, but I would say that's a rock bottom.
Yeah.
Like where did you go from there? Right, you beat it 3 times.
So
then it's like, now what?
So now I gotta work on the job, right? So the criminal charge is gone. Got to work on getting the job. But the first and forefront thing in my mind is my daughters. I got to get the daughters back, and this is where the family court comes into play. And I'd caution everybody on the job here because of the family dynamics, law enforcement, everything we deal with, that we're more at risk for family court situations than your average citizen. That's not saying we're special. It means that we're at risk for these things happening. The statistics flesh it out. 50 to 60% divorce rate for your average civilian. There are estimates out there that take it 10 to 20% higher than your average citizen. That's just the reality. Law enforcement, military, all these trauma things. I'll give you one quick principle, right? So there's a guy, Ed Licardo, and he's a French criminologist. He was supposedly the father of criminology. And if we apply it to criminal investigations, when a criminal act occurs, his principle was that every criminal act either leaves something at the scene or takes something from it. Right? So if you're looking at a crime scene, either something's changed, the criminal took something from the scene, or he brought something to it. Forensics evidence. He was a father of forensics. Now that applies to trauma. If you're a police officer and you're involved in these things, it either leaves something on your emotional well-being or it takes something from it. I think we can make that connection. So family court. I'm getting in there. I got to get my children back. Family court is what's called a court of equity, not a court of law. And it is very difficult to navigate. I had to navigate through custody, supervised parenting time, all these other things. And that court system, not to get in all the nuts and bolts, I had to become a pro se litigant. That means I represented myself, ran out of money for an attorney.
Oh, you did all this while
Off the job, suspended without pay.
self-representing.
And self-representing. So I was going in making motions, holding trials, marking into evidence, calling witnesses, cross-examining, cross-redirect. And part of that I got because I got involved in a fathers group in New Jersey called Fathers and Children's Equality, FACE NJ. And they help mothers as well. It's not just a father's thing. It's a family thing. It's a children's thing. So it happens to mothers too. And this was a group that helped me when I was at the lowest of the low. There are people that get on there, and we do Zoom calls, trying to give a little bit of this stuff back to other people, tell them how to navigate family court. First, stay out of court because it's crooked.
Yeah, it's its own monster.
Thousands and thousands and thousands, tens and 20s of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And to this day, I'm still fighting to see my daughters. I have not seen my daughters in over 6 years.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry to hear that.
And it is a constant weight on my mind. And, you know, I try and give something back. And there was kind of like a serendipitous meeting, like, why is this guy in a podcast? Well, during the course of my fathers and children's equality meetings, I came across another guy, and I can hear in his voice, he's a Jersey guy, and he's a Hudson County, New Jersey guy. So they got the hard Jersey accent, and he's talking, and I could tell he's on the job. They say we can smell our own, right? And it turns out not only is he a police officer, he is an Iraqi war combat veteran, Army captain, and we start to talking. And I said, listen, man, let's talk offline a little bit. I said, I'm on the job too. So I was like, you're in the right place. We talked a little bit about his case and whatnot, and he was in distress. And he goes, you know, I don't know, man, maybe you see me on this thing, the Suffering podcast. And I said, Suffering? I said, all right. I started talking. Listen, where I'm sitting there, I'm a hypocrite already, right? So podcasting, I thought it was an utter, complete, useless waste of fucking time. I thought they were total dumb for the feeble-minded that have just luxury of wasting time. And I'm like, I don't know, this guy, how could that be a real name? And I started looking it up, and this guy, and I'm going to mention his name because we're the best of friends now. He is one of my closest and best friends. His name's Mike DePalma, Army captain, Hoboken detective. And I started looking up on YouTube, and I said, holy shit, he's not lying. I was like, he's been on there as a guest, sort of like a guest co-host and things like that. Funny, great wit and everything else. And I said, man, I said, this guy's not kidding. I watched a bunch of episodes, and I said, I was wrong, man. Podcasting's not a waste of time. These are cops. They've been through trauma. There've been all these other stories. I saw this other guy. He was a cop in my own county. I said, I never met this guy before, but these two guys get it. They get the hardship and the adversity and all the use of force and all the bullshit that we have to deal with, and to keep going. And that was kind of just what I needed at the time. I was still helping people, but I'm sort of drowning in my own situation.
Can't pour from an empty cup, they say.
And there's just, you know, this one guy was like really articulate, the host. And I was like, you know, he's an intellectual guy. I was like, this guy, he's onto something here. And then I just kind of dropped off a little bit, started working another job in the IT field, and I get called into New York City. And I hate going into New York City. Just hate going into the city. I took mass transit. We're ass to elbow with all these other people. And the place where I worked was in Madison Square Garden. And oddly enough, there's this little gap in between like all the commuters and the hustle and bustle in downtown Manhattan. There was when the Canadian wildfires were happening, so the sky is blood red. Just a crazy, crazy freaking day, man. And I look, and there's this tall dude wearing glasses. And he's walking, and he's just kind of stoic, deadpan face, and he's holding a suit jacket in his hand. He's walking, and I'm looking. It's like, I know this guy. And I look, I'm like, that's the host of the Suffering podcast. I said, what the fuck is going on here, man? And I reached out my hand. I shook his hand. I said, Kevin Donaldson.
Heard the name.
And he looks at me and he goes, and I thought he was going to hit me at first. He's a big dude. I'm like, oh, no, man. Like, listen, I said, listen, I'm a cop. I think we know some of the same people. And we talked about this guy, Mike DePalma. He goes, you're Tom Flynn. I said, yeah, I'm Tom Flynn. I just said that. Who would admit to being Tom Flynn if they weren't? And we started to exchange numbers, and we talked afterwards. I think he called my buddy Mike to make sure I wasn't a lunatic, and he invited me on the show, and that's when I first told my story. And that was like over almost almost 2 years, about over a
That's
year
a
and a
real
half now.
podcast too. That's a real podcast.
It's all real podcasts, man.
Like-
and that's how I got into it. And that's really human connections, which is why I'm sitting before you today, because of that human connection.
Yeah, I reached out to Kevin to obviously get him on. He'll be on next week.
That's why
tomorrow.
you save your best for last, man. He won't disappoint, man.
Oh, dude,
He's the real deal.
Talk. I've heard him talk, and
real deal.
I want to pick his brain, and
Yeah.
he mentioned you, and I've heard good things about. And this is how
He is one
connection.
of my dearest and closest friends as well.
Yeah, I mean,
confide in him things I couldn't tell anybody else.
we all need someone like that too, especially someone who understands and someone who's going to check you too, right? You don't want someone who's just going to fluff you up.
No,
You want someone who's going to tell you, like, all right, well,
he abuses me relentlessly.
relentlessly. But
Our whole crew does.
yeah, he mentioned you. He's like, hey, while I'm coming down, I have a guy I think you'd want to talk to. I'm like, oh, dude,
Hopefully it worked out, man.
it is working out. It is working out because, I mean, we can do another 2 hours on this because it's like what? How do you still you're still talking about your story?
Yeah.
Where most people would fold. You're still trying to amend and make things right, quote unquote.
Yeah.
When most people are like, hey, this is the hand I've been dealt. It is what it is. Especially with fathers, right? We see a lot of fathers who just disappear when things get hard. We live in that time where it's easy for fathers to just, I can't see my kids.
Yeah.
And then they bad talk the mom, and it's like, well, she's horrible. That's why I can't see them. And then they go out and do their own thing, and it's like, well, have you stopped trying? Because it's not your kid's fault. Mm-hmm. Not that it's anyone's fault, but it's like the kids didn't ask to be in any of this.
Yeah.
So you still owe it to your children to fight and try.
This is a saying that I have stolen. I've plagiarized this from somebody, and I'm not going to give them full credit right now because their name escapes me right now. But it was a guest, and they said just because the parents are having a storm, the children don't need to get wet. You can't hate your spouse more than you love your children, no matter what they did to you, and they need loving fit, not someone that's going to alienate the children. And when I told you about being big on the badge, that is a thimble full of water compared to fatherhood, which is a vast ocean for me. So as big as I was on the badge, when I had children, they were with intention, they were with love, and it's never stopped. There is only one job I cannot fail at, and that's fatherhood. I can mess up everything else. Now, I won't be a perfect father, but I cannot fail at it. I owe it to them. I owe it to those children, and I owe it to sort of just fatherhood in general. I took on this thing, and I took on fatherhood for life. Talk about identities. I'm a father.
Yeah, that's something you'll always be. You can lose your job as a cop. You can, that's something I strive. I had my kid, I don't talk about this a lot, but I had my kid at a young age, right? Inner city youth. Come from humble beginnings. Where I grew up, fathers are not a thing.
Yeah.
So I had I didn't have any reason to keep me there. If I would have just left, no one would have batted an eye because this is the normal thing where I grew up. Mm-hmm. Just another deadbeat dad, and I don't catch a lot of the flack, right? Because that's unfortunately that's what it's become. Mm-hmm. Well, another absent father.
Yeah.
But. When I had my daughter, that changed everything for me.
Ain't it crazy, man?
I try to explain this to people. People make jokes about kids, and I get it. They're like, "Oh, I'll never have a kid." Oh, I get it. I get it.
For sure.
Kids are tough. But there's nothing that will tell you about yourself more than when you become a father. And then when you lean into it, that's a whole different world.
Yeah.
Right? It's one thing to have a kid, but it's another thing to intentionally want to be a father.
Yeah.
And this goes for people who don't have their own children but take on someone else's children. When you make that intentional decision of no, these kids are my world now.
For sure.
That changes you. It changes you, and it's just, especially when you're looking at you, little you.
It is insane.
I make this joke I argue with my daughter. I argue with myself. That is me. And then I'll catch myself like, wow, I can't even be upset. Like, this is me.
Yeah.
This is me. I'm arguing with a reflection of myself. How would I approach myself at this age?
Yeah.
You know? So now I'm forced to kind of change and be a better version and be a better person to approach my daughter.
Well, I can tell you this, when there are two people in a relationship, two parents involved, and the children hear one parent talking bad or say that there's an evil or bad part of that other parent, the children hear that and it tells them to hate a part of themselves. Because you say you see yourself in your daughter, the daughters, I'm sure, see a part of you in them. And that is a recipe for disaster, which is another reason that I do what I do. That this is an epidemic that nobody wants to talk about until they're in it, and then it's all they talk about, and anybody else listening just doesn't want to be bothered with baby mama drama, bad situation type of thing, man. Like, you just don't have the bandwidth for it. We don't want to take sides, but it is something that I argue for family court reform as well. So we argue for 50-50 shared parenting at the outset. So, and I applaud you, man, for picking up the shield of fatherhood and wearing it like a badge of honor, because that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's just, if more people, and it's just like, especially, I started thinking, this is a conversation I have a lot. It's like, what's plaguing inner city youth?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, there's no education, there's no programs, there's no money, there's no, it's like, what they're what missing, a lot of it is fathers.
Yeah.
Fathers.
Yeah.
Good parents. And it's when there's this system that gives you an excuse to not be a parent, you make it easy for no accountability to be there.
Yep.
And it's I grew up single mother household, and she did her best for me, and I can't complain.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I told myself is, like, my daughter didn't ask to be here. That was a stupid decision I made. I call it stupid, but it was the best decision.
For sure.
But it's like, I don't even know where I was going with this. Essentially, staying there, like, she could not, like, I will not repeat the same, like, she will not go through the cycle I went through.
Yep, that's the way I feel too.
And it's like, I will die before she repeats that cycle.
The reason I mentioned I was a child of divorce, and then when I intentionally started planning a family, is like, my children will never be exposed to what I was as a child. Now look what happened. But can't change that. What I can do is change every step moving forward and let them know, your father never gave up. Your father, like, what you're hearing may not be the true story. That may not be it. Then I got to help other fathers. I've helped other fathers that were subject to restraining orders when they were looking to hire private detectives or off-duty police officers to act as sort of like a moderator or supervisor. Part of the things I do for community outreach is I do it for free. I'll go out there and just do it like, listen, you don't have to hire anybody. I said, I'm not acting in a law enforcement capacity. I'm a private citizen. I'm not there to enforce. I'm not there to do anything. But for the benefit of both parties, and more importantly, for the benefit of the child, I will be there to facilitate a school graduation, a Father's Day picnic, a Mother's Day event, a birthday, a party where this restraining order that somebody else has to be there. I'll do it for nothing.
That's interesting. And that's something
you got to give back, man.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of that. And
I owe a debt.
I didn't even know that was a thing you could do.
God thrust this thing on me for whatever reason, a test to see what it is. Maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's just so somebody else can hear it. And I was in dark places, man. I was at the darkest place. I was ready. And you know what that means.
Yeah,
I was
can't
there.
imagine.
I was there. And then God put these other people in my life, like Mike DePalma, like Kevin Donaldson, gives me a microphone to put in front of my face that I thought was so stupid that I would never use.
It's crazy how that works. Huh?
I got the enlightenment to perhaps do something, be instrumental beyond myself. And that, in my eyes, and keep myself going, that's relentless. And
I see what you did.
what I'll also tell you is anytime you usually see me, whether it be in, anywhere else. I never leave anywhere without this around my neck, and it's a cross, and it's a dog tag. And the reason it's a dog tag is because I am in a fight. I am in a battle for my daughters. And engraved on this dog tag, it said, 3 little girls stole my heart. They call me daddy. And it's got all 3 of my daughters' names on it. And I will wear this till I breathe my last breath, whether my daughters are reunited with me or not. And that's what keeps me going, man.
And there will be a time where they are. And until what's a message? And I hope I'm not overstepping, but
not at all.
What's a message? Like, let's say they're listening. For odd reason, they tune into this episode.
Yeah.
What's something you wish you can tell them if they were listening?
So, getting back to what we were talking about, like the team, the SWAT team, and things like that. The first thing I have to do is I have to own whatever piece of this is that is my ownership. I'm not going to say fault because I don't necessarily think it's a fault, but what I could have done is whatever was going on that drove my spouse to pick up the phone and dial 911 that night, I should have been more skilled and more adept to intervene in that, to see that, to do something to mitigate that situation so the children would not be thrust into that. And I'd say what all dads say to their daughter: I love you to the moon and back, and Daddy never left, never gave up, and I love you with all my heart.
And what advice would you give a parent who may be listening, who's going through something or similar, or maybe they're trying to see their kids, they're trying to reach out to their kids, they're trying to lean into that parenthood that essentially has been stripped from them, whether it's the other parent, the court system, circumstances, whatever that may be. Someone who's trying, but they just can't seem to get there right now. What advice would you give them?
So, like most things, giving up and pulling off is a certain conclusion. That is a certain outcome. Embrace whatever the problem is. You got to look inward, like I try and do. Look with introspection to see, listen, is there a part of me that failed in fatherhood? The relationship might be something else, but where you failed in parenthood, motherhood, fatherhood, look at that. And if there is something to improve that you can do better, that's the first place to start with yourself. But there are resources out there. The organization, it's a 501c3 nonprofit, FACE, New Jersey. So you can find our organization at facenj.org. And then I'm also on the board of directors of the Suffering Podcast Dented Development Project. So the Dented Development Project is also another 501c3 organization, and we help law enforcement repair the dents caused by law enforcement trauma. And we say we're not broken, but we're pretty dented.
No, that's a good way to put it, because what is broken?
Right. Broken is something that is completely unfixable. We're dented, but we're not disposable. We're dented. And listen, I got a challenge coin for you from the Dented Development Project too. So
well, I got one for you too that I'll give you after. Yeah. You beat me to it.
No, I don't mean to steal your thunder, man.
No, this is your show, baby. This is your show.
That's on behalf of the president and the board of the Dented Development Project. Hear the thud, man. That's a solid coin.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like an It's like an anvil.
Dude, that is thick.
Yeah, and people can get those if they want to support the Dented Development Project. They just go to our website
and what does purchasing one of these get them? Where does it go to?
We always say to buy 2 because the motto on there, "Not Today," was created by the president, Kevin, and the rest of the board. And when you're having a bad day and you're in that dark, deep place where you're thinking about making the permanent decision to a temporary problem, you hang on to that coin, you reach out to somebody, and you have a spare when you see somebody else, and you give it to them. So we encourage people to get 2 coins at a minimum.
Well, I guess I got to support the cause for sure.
The first one's for free, man.
Dude, and this is
the heft of that coin, right?
It makes you think.
It stands out amongst the others.
It. You know, like, that's thick.
You look at the top, that notch out is on purpose. That's the dent. the whole thing was very well thought out.
Yeah, no,
you know?
this is, and what's there's obviously a time here, right?
Yeah, so that's, father time, and it said, stick around and grow old with us. Don't leave us. Don't leave us.
No, I like that a lot because, like you said, temporary solution. Well,
Permanent
solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have been in those dark places, and it may seem easy at the time, but what people don't think about is the everlasting effect that happens with that rash decision some people make.
I part of the people that were around, they had a pretty tragic loss, and I saw what that loss did to other people, and it really put in perspective when I was in that dark place that, I part of the sticking around is to see what it does to other people, and I can't do that. The way that these people have supported me in my darkest times, and now friendships, strongest friendships I could never imagine, between like-minded people that were there too. That's a godsend. So I that changed my outlook. And that coin and everything, I can't take credit. That's from the board.
Oh,
that's
no,
not me, man.
No,
they put a lot of work into that, and there's some dedicated people, man. First responders.
Well, this is gonna go to Michael. I have a little stand over there. I have a bunch of cool stuff, and
very cool.
I didn't get to do it today, but one thing I do, I go over there and I look at everything because it reminds me of all the conversations I've had. I have a book. I had Jillian here where she talked about she gave up her kid when she was a young age to give that child the best possible life, and she wrote a book about that whole process and what she went through. And it's like, talk about an ultimate selfless act.
Yeah.
Right? When we think parenting, we're like, how can I be a better parent? How can I be? Sometimes being the best parent is, making that tough decision. I have patches people have given me based off of different things they've gone through, challenge coins, and it humbles me, right? Because like I have these conversations with people, and like today, obviously I get back from the airport, my tire's flat.
Right.
Every opportunity, the motherfuck everyone, like fuck, I got you guys waiting here. But I was like, you know what? I'm thankful it's not raining.
Yep.
Because changing a tire in the rain would suck.
Half of it, well, I shouldn't say more than half of it's mindset, right?
Yeah.
Mindset.
And it's just, I think about what people have gone through, and I'm like, this flat tire is not the worst thing that's going to happen to me.
Yep.
Like something, I can save my anger and grief for a real moment, what I mean?
For sure. Don't waste your hate on a tire.
Yeah, so like getting to the airport, I couldn't find a parking. I'm like, why is everyone traveling?
Yeah.
Well, today I'm like, I'm so grateful that I had to park all the way in the back, because if there were, airport parking, they're nuts to butts.
Sure.
I was like, I'm so grateful I couldn't find a parking because I was forced to park all the way in the back. Well, now there's no cars around me while I'm changing this tire.
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm laughing throughout all as I'm changing the tire. I feel horrible because you guys are waiting, but I'm like, I think about all the conversations I've had and things I've been through, things other people have been through, and I'm like, I'm grateful that this is going to be my biggest issue today.
Yeah.
It's a flat tire.
For sure.
And I think if people look at all issues like that, hey, I'll save my anger for something down the road.
Something
that's one thing you can kick the can down the road. That's one thing I think will be very beneficial for people if they can apply.
100% for sure.
Things are always going to be thrown at you. You just get better equipped at dealing with them.
Yep.
Where can people find you online? Find the organizations you're involved in if they want to learn more, or they want to be a part of FACE, or maybe they need FACE New Jersey.
Yeah. So my social media, Instagram, Facebook, X, Threads, basically across all platforms. TikTok is The Tom Flynn. So it's at The Tom Flynn. They can hit me up on my website, which is thetomflynn.com. For FACE, you can go to facenj.org. They can also email me direct at tflynn@facenj.org. And, they can tune in to the Suffering Podcast.
Yeah, good podcast. I have to push people to that.
Yeah.
I've listened to a few episodes, and
it's partnered on my website as well as Kevin. So we redirect back to each of us, and pretty soon we'll be spinning up a YouTube channel. So
Let's go.
So
I've gotten big on the tube. I've been pushing
Yeah.
the tube a lot because
still under development, but it'll be at the Tom Flynn channel.
let's go. Well, you got your first subscriber whenever it launches.
Oh man, likewise. I'm already on yours.
Hey, appreciate it. You were that extra one I had. No.
Sweet.
And one thing I like to end with is after people have listened to your episode,
Yeah.
they've heard you talk, they've heard your story. What's one message you want them to take with them and apply to their lives after the episode is aired and done?
I think, there's a lot of trying to make excuses, right? There's an excuse that happens not to do something. I think chasing whatever your insufficiency is head on, saying I'm weak there, that's where I need help. Where you see everything falling apart, 2 simple directives: prioritize and execute, right? Because if you're worried about like one thing that's right here and it's soaking up all your energy, well, what you got to do is prioritize. So it's like I'm going to worry about my children before I am probably most of the other things. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to make sure I'm okay, but I'm going to prioritize those things and send out lifelines where I need to, but then execute where I have to. And you got to hold yourself accountable to executing those things. For me, the pro se litigation was very, very difficult. I learned. I became a student of the law. Every hearing that I went to, every motion that I wrote was not great in the beginning. And I learned through trial and failure. So giving up is not an option. And sometimes silence is not an option. So prioritize, execute.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, bro, I appreciate you for traveling a long ways to share your story.
It was well worth it, man. Absolutely, anytime.
This is, and like I said, this is a topic we haven't hit here on the Relentless Project. And I think it's a very important one.
Yeah.
It's a very important one.
Parental alienation is like a whole other dynamic in the mental health world, and DSM-5 and all that other stuff.
Being on the job, how many times do we see this?
Thousands.
Very often.
Yep.
I can't tell you the last conversation I've heard regarding this topic, though.
Yeah.
And it's tough, and it sucks to talk about, sucks to hear, right? Like in my perfect world, if I was president for a day, we'd have mommies and daddies and
family
children,
dynamics.
Yeah, family dynamics. But
intact families are one of the best success recipes, right? So sometimes it's not going to work. Listen, you got to split, but do a soft landing.
yeah,
Do a soft landing and do it outside the venue of the family court, because the only people that assuredly get paid are the lawyers. At the end of the day, win, lose, or draw, the lawyers get paid.
Yeah, and it's like if you both, let's say the relationship can't be salvaged, you both have to come together for your children, whatever that may be.
Yep.
Figure your stuff out, but like children first in that situation, because you both entered an agreement to be together. You both entered an agreement to not be together. The children never asked for any of this.
Nope.
They're just here
Yep.
because of an agreement that 2 adults entered to.
For sure.
So let's just be mindful and put our egos aside. And I see this all the time. You despise your spouse so much, I'm gonna stick it to them, and we put the kids in the middle, and no one wins. You lose, your ex loses, and your children lose.
Absolutely.
No one wins when you do that.
Yep.
You may feel like you're winning because you've stuck it to the other person at the expense of your children.
Yeah.
And that sucks to hear, and nothing pisses me off more.
For sure.
I have a big soft spot for children. Maybe it's because of my childhood, but yeah, don't put your kids in the middle of your situation and your drama. And I appreciate the way you've approached it and
sure.
how you still fight for your kids. And I pray that answer comes to you.
We take all prayers at the Flynn.
Hey,
at the
give a
Flynn
lot of prayer. I
household,
pray for
we
people.
accept them wholeheartedly.
I pray for people who don't even know I'm praying for them.
Gotcha.
You know,
man.
it's just
Very thankful.
I'm a huge faith-driven person, and I've been in dark places myself, and one thing has remained, and that is my faith, and it's gotten me to where I'm at today when I shouldn't be here. So
Likewise.
I can only be grateful.
Likewise.
Well, brother, appreciate you. I'll
Yeah.
see you tomorrow for the next one. This
got
is the
it,
one
man.
with Tom Flynn, and we're out. Later.
Later.